Summa Silver stands out as one of the few silver exploration projects focused in the United States. Its strategic exploration near to all mines, featuring large veins, makes it a vital story for securing this precious metal in the energy transition of the United States. Are you looking for a significant leverage opportunity in the American silver? Do you crave a narrative of continuous exploration success? Then don't miss out our upcoming interview.
Welcome, mining lovers. This is Charlano de Minas, the Spanish podcast dedicated to mining investment. Now, in English. Do you want to learn? Subscribe. Do you want more content in English? Leave us a comment. The episode is about to start. Welcome to Charlando de Minas, the first and only Spanish podcast dedicated to mining investment. Today, in English. However, if you are expecting this in Spanish, don't worry. You will have this interview translated to the language of Cervantes. Today, we are interviewing to Galen McMara, is CEO of Summa Silver. Summa Silver is a silver explorer with projects in the US and is listed in this TCXV with SSVR and the OTC with SSVR.F and in Frankfurt 48X. Hi, Galen. How are you? Thanks for coming to the program.
Hi, I'm very well. Thanks for having me on. And I like that reference you made, translating it to the language of Cervantes. That's good. That's good. That's
We
good.
have to make some fun, no?
Yes, please, of course.
First, I am sure that there is many people that listen for first time about you and about Summa Silver. Then I would like to introduce yourself, and if you can tell us a little bit about your background and experience.
Sure. Well, where to start? I'm a geologist by trade, going back about 15 years. I went to university here in Canada at a school called Laurentian University in Sudbury, Ontario, which is the geology program there is very mining and exploration focused, and that was what I was into as soon as I was into the geology program. So it was just a perfect fit for me to do it there. After that, I went away and I worked in a town called Flin Flon, Manitoba, doing copper and zinc exploration for 2 years. But then 2009 came and we all got laid off. So I went back to school and I went and did my master's degree, also at Laurentian. Moved back to Sudbury, Ontario, and since then have had the pleasure and the luckiness to work on several very positive things, mostly in Canada, a little bit in Chile, and now in the US, where my main focus is on Summa Silver. I've always been into the precious metals for whatever reason. That's just been what's interested me. And I've always been into exploration. I've never worked for a major mining company. And at this point, I probably never will. Although, never say never. We'll see, who knows. So exploration, mostly in Canada, now the US. I was lucky enough to manage the drilling for a company called Next Gen Energy on the Arrow deposit. More or less between 2014 and 2018, I was working on that.
It's uranium, right?
Uranium, yeah. And we, of course, made a very, very large uranium discovery in Saskatchewan that... if we ever meet in person and we're having a coffee or a lunch, I can tell you some very interesting stories about some of the biggest holes that we drilled. The biggest holes in uranium exploration ever, really.
I really hope to come to Canada at some point. Then for sure that I will call you.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. So left Next Gen in 2018. Spent really almost 2 years looking for projects. Precious metals focused generally. And at that time, 2018, 2019, we were in the desert for gold and silver, so I didn't really need to, personally, I didn't need to rush. I was good and I knew what I was looking for and I knew quality. And the first project that I saw that I really, really liked was the project that we now have in Summa Silver, in the eastern half of the Tonopah mining district that we've called Hughes. We'll get into that a little later. Yeah. So, that was one. Well, when we started the company, we were very fortuitous in timing, in that it was early 2020, and then of course in the summer of 2020, precious metals went on a very strong run. We were able to establish ourselves as a company with some very strong drill holes, and really establish what I think is a good valuation. So that's it. That's my history in the last 15 years or so.
Nice, nice. Thank you, Alan. Then, can you now give a quick overview of Summa Silver? As you said, we will go through in detail later, but basically provide the main objectives of the company, maybe.
Sure, sure. Well, yeah, let me build a little bit on the history first. It's
Okay,
a
yeah.
company. It's a company that I founded in the spring of 2020, with the idea of, on the first project in Nevada, but the idea of looking in these
Then basically
historic.
on COVID, right?
Yeah, on COVID. Yeah, that's right. In COVID. Yeah, yeah. The
Nice timing.
first. Well, I think the first financings we did during COVID, I didn't even meet anyone. Everything was done over Zoom,
Well,
in my home. So it was difficult, mostly for my wife, who had to listen to me tell the same story, for
over
three
and
straight
over.
days, over and over. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, but yeah, it was during COVID. Really, the objective of this company, excuse me, is, we're focusing on these historic Wild West mining districts that, although they helped shape the history of America in the 1800s and early 1900s, haven't seen much or any modern exploration. So it's just a really simple saying in mining. Sometimes the
Mm,
best place to find a new mine is next to the old mine, and
yeah.
when right next to the old mine is unexplored, it can be a pretty compelling targets there. So that's the one project was in Nevada. The other project is in New Mexico. But
Mm,
that's really the goal. And when I look into some of our aspirational peers, say companies that are more advanced than us, you
mhm,
can go into these places and start with a valuation of, say, 10 to 20 or 30 or $40 million, and if you're successful in exploration, you can drill out hundreds of millions of ounces, and I think over time, over years, justify valuations over $1 billion, and
mm.
maybe even eventually attract a suitor. Although I don't necessarily plan for that. We just control what we can control. But I just see that was really my focus and uh, my thought on building the company as it's built.
Perfect.
Mhm.
Before going into detail in all the exploration projects that you have and all the results, I would like to ask you a little bit about the silver investment case. Okay. On one hand, we have tailwinds like silver being extensively used in solar panels. No, also we might have this gold and silver ratio that it's completely out of the mean. However, since I start investing, no, I hear the same arguments: silver squeeze, silver to the moon, silver to $200. But silver is not able even to break the $25 range. People who want to invest in precious metals usually prefer to invest in gold, and you can see the performance of gold in over the recent years, no?
Yeah.
And if you look for industrial metal, then you prefer to go probably for copper, for example, if you think
hmm
about electrification.
hmm
Why do you think that we should keep believing in silver then?
You know what? There's a lot in that question. You make a lot of interesting points, and I'm with you. I remember, for the past 3 years, we've been hearing this silver squeeze stuff and
Hmm.
all that, to the moon and all that stuff. But I think for me, from my perspective, I ask myself, okay, well, what projects will work at current metal prices? Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want to go after. So I'm on this company. We really concentrate on high grade silver deposits. And then, hey, another point you made there, silver versus copper. Well, I think both are important, and I don't think we need to choose one or the other. I think a lot of metals are going to be very important in the next several decades, as we really need to secure sources that are closer to domestic than we already have, and looking at everything that's going on geopolitically in the world. And so that's one thing, right? You look at the other thing on copper versus silver. There's a good analogy. There's a good thing that I heard from Keith Neumeyer in an interview that said,
Mm-hmm.
uh, copper is the highway, silver is the glue. Like every little bit of new electrification or new high tech gadget needs just a little bit of silver, and it's because of its electrical conductivity. It's actually higher than gold.
Yeah.
So, I think we're looking at an environment where, like good silver deposits are already very hard to find. Good ones in first world jurisdictions are even harder to find.
Yeah.
Good ones that have high grade and all of these things. You start ticking boxes, right? And when I'm looking for value, so that is again, why we're working where we're working and what we're working on is to with that in mind. But then, okay, so that's part of the question.
Yes.
And the other thing there, one of the other things you talked about was silver in solar panels and other green applications, right? Well, I think I read a stat somewhere where the IEA, the International Energy Agency, thinks that silver demand for silver to go into solar panels is going to double by 2030 or something like that. Well, right now it's something like I think 20% of silver supply is used in solar panel construction. So say, give or take, about 200 million ounces a year. I mean, if you need to double that by 2030, that is an extremely, that's a lot. That's a lot, and I think that can have a very good impact. But here's where it gets really interesting. Where a friend of mine, Chen Lin, does a lot of work on this type of thing, and he's made a couple good points in that there's new solar panel technologies that are being developed right now and are starting to become adopted. One is called TopCon. The other, I think, is called HJT, where these new technologies use anywhere from 50 to 100% more silver per panel. So right away, you start thinking, okay, well, if we're going to go from 200 to 400 just on current technology,
Yes.
if we use technology that uses more silver, the effect might be even more pronounced. Exactly. And also the interesting thing about solar and I don't think, hey, it's renewables versus nuclear versus all this stuff. Why it has to be one or the other? I think that there's a good mix for all of this zero carbon approach to energy. But solar is very cheap on a per gigawatt hour basis to construct relative to anything else, and I think that is going to become increasingly important in the next 10 years. And I don't know what the total area is exactly, but I think it's something like, if we had, I want to say, covered in the neighborhood of 100 kilometers squared. 100 kilometers squares. It sounds like a big number, but it's really not when you look on the map. You power the whole. You have enough power there, enough surface area to power the entire United States. Now, of course, you got to think about batteries, and that's not a problem that we've solved yet. But I'm one of the people that sees solar applications in the future only becoming much more important. Okay, so there, I've walked down quite a path there for you on that. But now the other thing you talked about was silver versus gold, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's another interesting topic in that I think the mine ratio of silver to gold is something like 7-1. The mine ratio. Now the price ratio right now is 85-1. Right? So you got to wonder, well, why? And I don't need to get into the, all of the stuff with the market shenanigans that go on in the silver market. But to me, that is a very interesting statistic. And the other thing is that many times in precious metals bull markets, most times, silver actually outperforms gold.
It is true.
Right? So I'm not saying you should own all silver and no gold. But, me personally, I like a mix, and I'm invested in both.
Perfect. I think it's a very good answer, Helen. Then we might start to look to the actual projects of Summa. As you said, you have two main projects, both in the US. One is called Mogollon, and the other is Huge. First, if we go in detail in Mogollon. Okay, Mogollon project, in my notes it said that it's located 120 kilometers from Silver City in the southeast of New Mexico, and it covers an extensive silver gore bearing of veins, or the vein field. In this region, it was a large historic silver producer in New Mexico with at least 16 million of ounces of silver and over 300,000 ounces of gold. with very high grades, an average of almost 300 grams per ton of silver and over 6 grams per ton of gold in last century. And if we have a look on the presentation, we can see that there is in a range of 2 kilometers along this Queen vein. There is multiple objectives. Following that trend in the Mogollon project, we can see like 4 old mines or 4 mine infrastructures maybe, and you can go in detail later. We can see 2 main mines that are the Consolidated and the Deadwood, and the Erwin mine and the Clifton tunnel. You have a very interesting results, either by grabbing samples with over 5,000 grams of silver equivalent, or drilling with over 23 meters of over 400 grams per ton of silver equivalent. Will this be a good summary of the project, maybe?
Yeah, yeah. That is a good summary. Do you want me to describe it a little more?
Yes, because these are very encouraging results. But you
Mm.
said no that you have, and I think that I am quoting you. That it's my strong belief that this district has the potential to be one of the greatest remaining vein fields still left in the U.S. No,
Yes.
then if you can go a little bit more in detail, why do you have this strong belief, and then explain a little bit more in detail the project, maybe.
Sure, sure. Yeah, that's a great place to start. So, big picture, I look at this project and I see a lot of mineralization still remaining at surface.
Hmm.
I see a vein field that has a cumulative structure and strike length of the veins and faults of 77 kilometers. And it's just not explored. Some of it's mined, yes, but as far as we know, only 13 million ounces of silver came out of it. Yeah, it's probably a bit more because records weren't, that well kept back, in the late 1800s.
Hmm.
But when you look at that footprint and the footprint of the mineralization, it compares, I think, very well to some of the famous districts in Mexico that the Spanish and indigenous peoples, even before that,
Yeah.
mined going back 500 plus years. And again, just not explored. And people ask me, okay, well, why is it? How is that possible? Why is that not explored? And I think the best way to answer that is to provide some context on the history of the project. So, this one was discovered in the 1880s by a sergeant in the U.S. Cavalry that was up scouting, because that's when a time when they were in conflict between the Apache people and the U.S. government. Found this vein that I've actually walked up and seen his old mine, which is surreal, but that's another topic. And found this vein, kept it secret until he left the military a few years later. Went up there, staked some claims actually with his brother, started a small mining camp, started mining for a couple years, but that was during the time when the conflicts were still ongoing. So
Hmm.
he was in a conflict and ended up being killed. So that kind of shut things down for some time. Between then and the 1940s, there was waves of production as silver prices and the economy of the area went up and down. And then in 1942, the United States entered World War II. So that's when all silver and gold mining stopped by law, by presidential order, I believe.
Yeah.
So that's World War II. After that, it didn't really pick back up because in a lot of these places, land fragmentation is a problem. Where that's what I call it, where one family owns this little claim, another
Hmm.
family owns that little mine. Putting it all together can be a bit of a challenge. But in the 1970s, it was done by a very well-known geologist named John Livermore. And his partner Andy Wallace worked up there a very significant amount of time, along with other very important people who really advanced this project. I can't name them all, but they saw the potential and did deals with different landowners, staked different claims to put it all together, so you could kind of have that big picture, and you weren't just looking on this little part of the vein, right? And John was a guy who was very successful. He found some of the original mines for Newmont in Nevada in the 1960s.
Hmm.
That Elko area, the Carlin Trend area. So he was independent at that time and decided he liked it and put all the properties together, mostly with his own capital, and then did a lot of drilling mostly with his own capital, which I thought was very interesting. And he had some good results that we've been following up on. But at that time, in the 70s and the 80s, people in this part of the world, and everywhere really. I mean, that's not fair to say just this part of the world, but people were really looking for, the next Morenci open pit copper mine, which is only 45-minute or hour drive away from us. Here they were looking for the next Carlin style open pit that was 2 or 3 grams per ton. Just because those deposits were so lucrative, and they weren't really looking at these underground mining veins of high grade. And it just wasn't the focus at the time for explorationists, because you still had these big copper and gold deposits at surface that just are becoming harder and harder to find now. I don't want to say they're not around, but they're becoming harder and harder to
No,
find.
and the grades have decreased a lot.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So you have that, and then move forward a few years, you have companies like Mag Silver, and Peter McGaw and team, who kind of take a look at these old districts, and with what we know now and what they didn't know way back then in terms of how the deposits form just geologically, or the tools we have, whether it be geophysics or geochemistry or 3D modeling of computers, in computer software, that we now have a lot more. We have a modern arsenal of weapons to go in and make new discoveries in these places. But successes like Mag and Silvercrest and now Vizsla, they've really blazed a trail for junior companies to go into some of these old places, apply a modern focus, think commercially, think entrepreneurially, and have some success. And have a good shot at having some success.
Great. You said that in the area there are all these Carlin type of deposits, and obviously they are open pit and they are very economic, and so most of your results are from underground mines, no? But although there is a few, mm, quite in the surface, then how do you see the evolution of this district? Do you see that there will be very or different underground mines? Do you think that will be different, maybe open pit deposit that then they will convert it in underground? How do you visualize this on the future?
You know what? I think that we're in an underground mining situation that selectively mines high grade, while minimizes environmental and surface impacts.
Yeah, this is true.
I think that's a really important focus for us, but I also think that's the only way that it would, work economically. I don't think that that this is an open pit situation
Okay,
at all.
perfect. I saw that the main exploration is in consolidated mine. What is the strategy in Mogollon? Are you looking to have a resource SAP maybe on the consolidated mine and then start to get some revenue by mining that part? Are you looking first to have a great resource across the Queen Vein, to get funding and get a big project? How is the approach that you are looking at
Yeah,
this?
yeah. I think that we need to show a path to a critical mass, and
Okay.
I think that means that we need to think big and don't be afraid to think big and take big swings. So I think that on both the projects, and let's just start at Mogollon,
Hmm.
where what we're planning to do this year is, hey, we've got around that consolidated mine, we've got some great results, some very big numbers, but we also know as we go, a kilometer and a half to 2 kilometers to the south in the same vein, the Queen Vein, there's a lot of good mineralized zones that are not
Yeah.
at depth and are open underneath them and are open around them. That our goal now is to start to show some scale in that rather than just stepping out around where we know there's mineralization, where we've already drilled, excuse me,
Yeah.
and we'll get back to that. We're going to be aggressive and step out, 500 meters, a kilometer, something like that, so we can start to show the scale. In terms of resource for us, I don't think there's a big rush to get there. It'll happen as it happens. I look at our valuation, and
Mm.
when we get to a point where I say, okay, well, the ounces in the ground are worth more than our valuation, then I'll think
Okay.
about putting out something then. Or when I think that, hey, this is something that is very large, and I'll think about putting it then. And the issue is that when a company puts out a resource, a lot of times, there's a perception that it's a finish line. But for us, it would
Mm.
really only be a start line, right, on both of these projects. So that's something we think about a lot, like a
Hmm.
lot, and it's something that you kind of only get one chance to get it right.
Okay. No,
Yeah,
no, it's. I mean, I think that all the strategies are valid. Meanwhile, you know what you are doing, and if you are looking for a scale, and if you are looking to demonstrate that this is a district, that it's not a small mine that can produce something that give you some revenue to explorate and so, then it's perfectly fine.
yeah,
And you said not that across this queen vein you have many other targets there, and
yeah.
maybe I will ask you if you can highlight these other projects, maybe other targets across this Mogollon project.
Sure, sure. Well, the main thing to think about is that there's 77 kilometers of prospective structure and vein on the project. We've drilled 500 meters with our results so far. This year, we're going to test another, say, kilometer and a half, just with
Hmm.
some exploratory style holes. So that gets you to say about 2 kilometers. But zoom out, there's
But it will be a continuation of this 500, or it will be
correct,
a completely another side of the project. You know what I
correct.
mean? You will be continuing the line until you see like the end. Is this the strategy?
Yeah, correct. That will be on the same vein. So
Okay.
just like you said it. So other targets in the area, there's lots of other places where you can go to these veins at surface and sample
Mm.
500, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 grams per ton plus that just aren't drilled. And all the mining that's been done on them is very small scale. So that is more of our long term focus of developing those targets. But really, the lowest hanging fruit is on that queen vein right now, because we know that our drilling has been very successful.
Hmm.
The veins are very wide. The vein is very wide. I think the first hole we drilled there was something like 50 meters in core length of vein. Not all of it was mineralized.
Of
Maybe half
course.
of it was, or something like that. But that's very substantial. And then we've now compiled historic data that shows that there's more targets along this queen vein.
Hmm.
And two of the targets, two of the old mines, the Eberly mine was one, and the Deadwood mine was another, were never part of the property package. We acquired those separately over the last couple years. So now it's like we've put this puzzle together that
Hmm. All the
and
strike.
yeah, exactly, exactly,
Hmm.
exactly.
Hmm.
And we went out and staked a lot more claims. But the thing that's really important for me, when I ask myself, okay, like, where targets do we want to test on this project first? And I say, okay, well, where's the ounce potential the best? Where do we get the most bang for our buck, right? And
Yeah.
when you're drilling a vein that's 20 to 40 meters in true thickness, that build, and you're hitting good grade, that
Yeah. Yeah.
builds
That's a big
ounces
number. Yeah.
really quickly. Yeah,
Because
comparative. Yeah.
in this project we are not talking about narrow veins. Then they are. I mean, or at least the main vein or the main resource, it will be from a thick vein of 20 meters, let's say.
Yeah, exactly. The main vein so far is something like that wide. When you drill it,
Hmm.
and different parts of it are mineralized as you go through it,
Hmm.
right? But that's exactly it.
I
That's
think that it's
exactly it.
important because sometimes you see all of these epidermal veins that are 1 meter, half a meter. Yeah, it's a really high grade, but following this, we have seen many mines that they try to develop this and they just go bankrupt because it's very difficult to follow. It's very difficult to have to keep it lower the cost and everything. Then I think that it's important to highlight
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Um, I am wondering because there are all mines, then there is any infrastructure in that project. You have water, you have energy, you have things that might help, the development of a future mine.
You know what? The way to think about this is that it's an exploration project with these
Okay,
old, very historic mines on them.
okay.
It's an exploration project, so there's still a lot of questions to answer on the what and the how. But the first thing you need to do is figure out what you actually have before you can start planning that, and that's where we're at. But the nice thing about this is that we're not talking about drilling in Alaska somewhere where it's helicopter everywhere and all that.
Yeah.
It's you're driving right up to site. We're staying very close. You're driving right up to your drill rig every day when the geologist goes and checks it or grabs core. So I think so that right there is yeah, just what you want, for sure.
Okay. Um, then you said that you will be doing this kilometer and a half of drilling, and you said you potentially have 77 kilometers across that you can drill, but this costs a lot of money, right?
That's right.
Um, how are you in terms of cash? When do you will need more money? And what are you expecting to do with the money that you have at the moment?
Yeah. So right now we've got a little under 7 million Canadian in working
Hmm.
capital, which is a good position to be in. It's enough to go out and add a lot of value to our projects.
Mm.
It's especially relative to many others out there now that are trying to find some money, and it's
Yeah,
very
it's
difficult.
complicated in that
Yeah, it's
times. Yeah.
complicated. That's a good way to put it. So, but I mean, for us, this coming season, we're about to start drilling again in Mogollon in
Mm.
about later this month. And for us, my word this season, my approach this season is like surgical, where we're gonna just kind of drill a few holes in some very high potential
Okay.
areas that I think have a very good chance of doing very well.
Mm.
So we can just say, okay, across the scale of, say, across this 2 kilometers of the Queen Vein, we can start to see that, quote unquote, that I used earlier, critical mass. So right now, my approach to discovery is very measured and careful. Where are we going to
Okay.
get the most bang for our buck with the dollars that we have? Understanding that the market conditions for all junior mining companies are very hard. And I would say that if this was a different time, if this was maybe the summer of 2020, I'd probably want to have 2 rigs here in New Mexico, and then maybe another 2 rigs in Nevada. I think, like, geologically, there's
Mm.
justification for that. There's very good justification for that.
Mm.
But right now, as a CEO of a junior mining company, it's about balancing your capital and really being a bit, perhaps, uh,
Conservative.
yeah, conservative, but not conservative. You still need to add value everywhere. It's
Yeah,
about
yeah, yeah,
being
yeah.
methodical and measured.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
because, well,
Then,
just before you move on, it's tough to say conservative when we're in the exploration business. Our
yeah.
whole the whole business is built on us taking risks, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's
So
true.
right?
uh, but then you are good with the money that you have for the next campaign, let's say.
Oh yes, oh yes, yeah,
Yeah. Then maybe we can move now to the huge project, no? That it's
sure.
located in Nevada and follow this Walker Line trend, which has produced at least 80 million of ounces of gold, 700 million ounces of silver. The project is in the eastern side of the Tonopah district. It's the second largest historic silver producing in Nevada, with a total production of 175 million ounces of silver and almost 2 million ounces of gold, with even higher grades than the other project. Okay. Um, I I could see a little bit of highlights from the last drilling campaigns, no? And you have over almost 4,000 grams per ton of silver equivalent with almost 3 meters. Then you have over 500 grams per ton of silver equivalent over 18 meters. Then these are really good results that you have there. There is an old mine that it's called Belmont Mine and has multiple zones for the drilling with over 1,000 grams per ton of silver equivalent, and it's a trend of 3.5 kilometers. Then it looks and another project with a great potential, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. This is actually the project that we originally started working on. It's the first one that we drilled. We've
Mm.
drilled 60 plus holes here in on the Hughes project in Nevada versus the other project in New Mexico where we've drilled 19. This is another shot at looking in this old district that is open in many directions, a lot of room to run. Ounces in Nevada, high grade ounces in Nevada, that state, are very valuable. Very, very valuable. It's an interesting project in that. Well, again, let me start from the beginning here when I first
Yeah,
started
of
looking at
course.
this. So I was looking at this project. It was the eastern half of the Tonopah mining district, and none of the guys that owned it at the time, and they had done a great job of securing it and working on it where they could. We're looking at it mostly from the perspective of tailings reprocessing,
Mm-hmm.
where there's something like 2 to 3 million silver equivalent ounces in some tailings, just really accessible, really easy to get. Um, that runs like maybe 70 grams per ton silver equivalent, silver and gold. So from a private investor perspective and a private geologist perspective, hey, 2 to 3 million ounces of silver, that might be like 50 or 60 million US, right? That could be very lucrative. But from a capital markets perspective, 2 to 3 million ounces of silver doesn't really move the needle, to be fair. So I started speaking to them about it, and just thought to myself, well, what about the underground potential here? And there was no data on it, so I kind of got really into the details, and I found a bunch of historic mine maps and enough that we could build a 3D model. Did that, and of course, when we build a really detailed 3D model, there was some really good looking targets, and those are the first holes we drilled. But the other side of the equation was, you see all these veins that they strike out to the east of the town. They dive undercover and they're cut off by a fault. So that was what happened to the old timers. The old timers kind of lost the veins as they dove undercover and were cut off by a fault. But we looked at all this ground open immediately east of the district, like right along strike, like right beside the district, open ground. I just thought to myself, well, geez, you don't see that every day. So I got on a plane and I flew down to Nevada, and I staked a bunch of it myself. Now today would be like really difficult to do that because the area around Tonopah, Nevada is more or less lithium central for lithium clay deposits. So everything is staked, right? There's no way, but we got lucky with timing, and we're able to stake quite a bit. Where we now have this something like 3 or 4 kilometer strike extent of the historic Tonopah district, where we've taken some risk this summer. Did some real big exploration step outs or more or less wildcat holes, and made 2 new discoveries. The first at Ruby in a new vein, 3 meters of 1450 grams per ton silver equivalent. But then the other at Sapphire in just one RC hole, 1.5 meters of a little under 400 grams per ton silver equivalent. So now we've drilled out east of the district something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 holes. All of them have hit something. Some of them have hit some pretty good mineralization. So I think that big picture out there to the east of Tonopah is our big exploration swing. And when I ask myself, hey, on our project, where am I going to be able to find another 100 million ounces? I think that is where I would start to look for sure.
Which one of the projects have more priority for you?
You know what? It's really difficult to say because each hole, one hole changes everything, right?
Yeah, of course.
Where
Yeah.
at first it was Tonopah, because we were having some great results there back 2020, 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Then when we started drilling in New Mexico, we got some great results there. I think our best hole's 30 meters of 450 or a little under 450 grams per ton silver equivalent. So I mean, right there, that has to be your focus. That's where you're building the most ounces. But just this last summer, where we've now made discovered a couple new veins, within shouting distance of this really, really prolific historic district that are open in all directions and need a lot more work. Well, then it kind of gives me pause. You know what I mean? So ask me that again in 6 months, but the results
will do that then.
yeah, the results will dictate the focus, right? And wherever we think that we're getting the most efficient discovery costs is where we'll focus.
Okay. Let's say a little bit as a summary, then we go to another questions. But
Sure.
if someone buys a share of Summa Silver today, what results or maybe answers can be expected in a year from now?
Yeah, right. So I think, that's a good question. So for us, we're going to return to drilling in New Mexico very shortly. So there will be, I hope, I have high hopes for strong drill results from there. And then the plan is next year in the later spring to again return to Nevada and start drilling there. So for us, the catalysts are going to be very much, very, very much drill results focused. And if you look at our history, we've done a pretty good job of continuing to put out good results. I don't think there's a time where I put out results and think, geez, we missed. You know, we've been good that way, and that's just
Yeah.
a reflection of the projects and our process. It's not because we're really good or anything like that. That's not the idea here. But the projects and the process so far have worked, and that's really our focus for the next year is continue to add value to both projects by drilling. And I think that if you look at our stock and when it does best, it's when silver gets a little bit of tailwind, when precious metals get a bit of tailwind.
Yeah.
And my experience, my observation is that we're highly leveraged to that, very very much so. So if we can combine good results, some tailwinds in the markets, it doesn't take much to push our stock up significantly very quickly.
Yeah. 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 Is Summa Silver looking for any new acquisition? I mean, I know that this costs money, obviously, and you have to be always open to the market, and you have two great projects with a lot of potential and a lot of work that have to be done. But are you actively looking for opportunities?
Yes, I mean, I'm always actively looking for opportunities. Whether anything happens and anytime soon, who knows? But I think that if we want to grow the company, there's two ways to do it. One is
Hmm.
through the drill bit, and the other is through M&A.
Hmm.
And I try to be always looking for things where maybe 1 + 1 could equal 3 or 4, but those opportunities are very rare.
And are you looking only on the States, or you are looking to another locations?
I think right now, focusing on the U.S. I
Okay.
ask myself, why invest in Summa? What makes us unique? And I think it's the high grade jurisdiction. There's just very,
Mm.
very few names to like that to invest in, and that's part of why I think we can be successful in the markets.
Mm. Maybe we can go to this question now. I have it for later, but in general, no, the U.S. is considered tier one jurisdiction. But many projects suffer in order to obtain
Yeah,
permits, changing legislation. It just comes to my mind Trilogy Metals, no, that has all the problem there in Alaska. What
yeah.
are your thoughts about the people that it's not sure of investing in a mining company in the U.S. due to this?
Sure, sure. Well, I would say, in my experience, that where you are in each jurisdiction matters a lot. What state you're in and what county you're in really
Hmm.
matters a lot. Where you are, you can't just. It's really hard to just say, even for Canada. Okay, well, Canada's first where it's good, right?
Yeah.
Depending on where you are, it's on. I wouldn't try to. I wouldn't want to try to build a mine, right next to Vancouver, right? I think that would be quite difficult to do.
Hmm.
The other thing too is that in places like the U.S. and places like Canada, property rights still mean something, right? So that's, I think, a very important feature. Whereas other places in different countries, you really don't sure, as a company, what you actually own, right? It can, when especially in places where expropriation has been a problem in the past. Places in Latin America where you might not own anything at the end of the day after you invest all this money, which is a big problem.
Hmm.
Um, Also, I think that in places like the U.S. and in places like Canada, the rigorous environmental standards are a really good thing, and permitting should be taken very seriously. And that takes some time. It just does. Whether it's too long or too short, that's hey, that's not for me to say. I'm just here to follow the rules. I'm just here to follow
Yeah.
the rules. But I think that the rigorous process there is important and a reason to invest, because because these days, it's just you need a social license to operate, and unless you
Hmm.
do everything right and do what you say you're going to do, it's really really difficult to get that. So yeah, that's my opinion on that.
Okay, you said and a couple of times during the interview, and you put examples of Max Silver, Silvercrest, Vizsla Silver. Are these companies that you are mirroring in? Let's say that you look like yourself, Summa Silver, as the beginning of the new Max Silver, the beginning of a new Vizsla Silver. Is how you look to your company today?
That is what I would say is our aspiration as a team.
Okay,
Is that type of
of company.
resource, is that type of company. Yeah, yeah.
And the question that I have now is why those companies and not maybe First Majestic, Fortuna Silver?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we could. That's a good question. We could add all those companies to the list too. These ones were just the first that came to mind. There's a good
Okay,
number of
okay.
examples of.
No, I
Thank you,
said maybe
for
maybe
pointing
have
that
a.
out. Yeah.
Okay. Can you explain a little bit about the team of Summa Silver, maybe?
Sure, sure. So myself, Galen, you've been talking to me for the
Hmm.
last 45 minutes, so I think we know you.
You
Um,
said we can do this in 20 minutes and go.
yeah.
Yeah, I said it's a little bit longer. It will
Yeah,
be.
yeah, that's right, that's right. Our CFO, Martin Bajik, he helped
Yeah.
me found the company, excuse me, and has been working on it with me since the beginning. Our VP Exploration, Chris York, joined us from Hecla a little over 2 years ago now, where he was managing a lot of the exploration in Nevada for them. He's very,
Mm.
very focused operationally and really helps make my life easier, which is good. Christopher Leslie, geologist here in Vancouver, works with us on a part-time basis, but he's one of the guys that discovered the Blackwater gold deposit here in BC, which is something like 8 million ounces in the proven and probable categories right now.
Hmm.
On our board, well, not to go into everybody, I think that's good for
No,
now.
no, no, it's
But
fine.
long story short, a group of mid-career mining professionals
Hmm.
that have had some success in the past and now want more.
What the only thing that I not worry, no, it's not the word, but when I see a little bit the team, I wondering if you have someone that is expert on markets, because you will need money for that.
Yeah.
You have someone that have experience, or do you think that this is something that you are missing and you are looking for someone that can help you to bring money to the company when it's needed?
You know what? We work with partners on the market side that
Okay.
have had a lot of success. Um, to give you an example, we've never had any issues raising money, and we're not afraid to move quickly when the time is right. Um, without getting too far into the details of
Yeah.
the when and the where, no, that's not really something that concerns me. I think that the company right now is built fit for purpose.
Perfect.
And as we advance, we can start to look to build out the team. But right now, it's about being efficient, entrepreneurial, and fast.
Perfect. I will ask you to explain just briefly share structure and main shareholders.
Sure, sure. So we've got a little over 100 million shares outstanding. I think it's 104 million. Our biggest shareholder is Eric Sprott. He
Hmm.
comes in at around 18%. Our second largest shareholder is a company called Allegiant Gold right now. They are the group that we optioned the Magillon project off of and recently
Okay.
earned in 100%. SILJ is a shareholder of the ETF. Um, they've increased their position in the last rebalance, which was good. Uh,
Hmm.
and then the last group that I will mention is First Majestic Silver, is a shareholder of ours, and they've participated in a financing before, and yeah, they're shareholders as well. So it's a good amount of mining focused, silver focused people, and I think that has
Hmm.
a lot to do with the fact that there's really not that many names out there that are like Summa.
No. Thank you very much, Galen. I think that we have covered all the projects. I think that we have covered the team, the country, and everything, and has been less than 50 minutes.
Perfect.
uh, for me, it has been a pleasure to talk a little bit through the project, and of course, we'll talk in the future. You said that in 6 months
Yeah,
you will know where where should you put the money
sure,
in which project. Then
sure.
I will make that call, and I will finally let you the last minute maybe to talk to the audience and maybe convince them or say anything that you want.
Yeah. Okay. Well, geez, that's just put me on the spot here. You know what? I look to the future of what we're doing at Summa, and we've covered a lot in the interview. But we are a well-financed silver exploration company with high-grade silver assets in the U.S.
Hmm.
That is going to be adding value via drilling. So, if you're interested in junior exploration and you're interested in silver, I don't think there's a better name that you want to consider owning.
Thank you, Galen.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Amado.
Disclaimer. The content in Charlando de Minas is not an investment advice. Amadeu Bonet and his guests are not investment advisors. The authors may have interest in the companies mentioned in this publication. They may also have bias and not be impartial. The information in this publication and all the others in Charlando de Minas is impersonal by nature and should be considered as an entertainment product. The minimum risk of any investment mentioned in this video is 100% of the capital. Before to make any investment decision, contact a financial or investment advisor or someone qualified with experience. These broadcasts are a narrative of my learnings in the world of commodities and mining investment. In this podcast, we will try to bring experts, professionals, and companies. If you like it, please subscribe. I am Amadeu Bonet. Welcome to Charlando de Minas.